Who to be or who not to be? That is the question. Shapeshifting has been a popular trope in all of fantasy, but has particularly become more popular in D&D after the introduction of the changeling. But doppelgangers are the OG changelings, and so we're gonna craft a series of investigation encounters that fully use their iconic ability in a fun and engaging way. Hello, my name is Matt, and welcome to my hidden nerdy side, and today we're tackling the ever-changing monstrosities known as doppelgangers. We are going to take a look at their lore, info, and abilities, and then build an encounter you can steal, modify, and plop straight into your D&D games. And to make sure this video is a decent length, we'll only be pulling the doppelganger lore, info, and abilities that exist in the monster manual, which can be found on page 82. So without further ado, let's take a look at doppelgangers. Doppelgangers are shape changers who often take the form of any humanoid individual they desire, blending into society and spreading fear and suspicion like few others can. Despite doppelgangers being quite rare, they are plentiful enough to be found all over the world, but their transformation only pertains to physical features, meaning it would not inherently know everything the creature it copies would know, such as languages, skills, secrets, and so on. That being said, doppelgangers are able to read minds to a certain degree, so picking up important details about their targets isn't too difficult. And with these abilities, doppelgangers are able to run cons and swindle people out of many things by pretending to be noblemen, merchants, or whatever. And doppelgangers are also known to work together, making their cons even more difficult to predict. And finally, doppelgangers are known to be very self-interested, so much so that they will usually abandon their children with the humanoid creatures they mate with. And it's only known the child is a doppelganger when it reaches adolescence and starts to show its true colors, at which point the child will typically leave to seek out its own kind. Now, when we jump over to their actions and abilities, there is definitely enough to play with. A couple of nice additions are doppelgangers do get advantage on surprised creatures and deal a decent amount of extra damage, which is a nice way to start off combat. But of course, their two more popular abilities are Shape Changer and Read Thoughts. As a Shape Changer, doppelgangers can turn into any small or medium creature it has seen or back to its true form. Anything from gnomes to dragonborn is fair game. However, only its body is transformed, not its gear, so make sure to take that into account when planning your own encounters. And finally, Read Thoughts allows a doppelganger to read the surface thoughts of one creature within 60 feet of it. While reading a creature's mind, the doppelganger has advantage on insight and charisma skill checks against that creature. Now, it's important to define what surface level thoughts are. It doesn't specifically state it in the stat block, but in the monster description, it refers to anything basic about the creature, like their name, desires, fears, and a few random memories. I'd also extend this definition to anything they're currently focusing their mind on, such as the current conversation at hand and information related to it, since it would be at the forefront of their mind. However, everything else is too deep in your target's subconscious. So as a doppelganger, if you want to get to your player's deepest, darkest secrets, you'll have to prompt your players to think about such things. One last thing, this is actually a concentration ability and can only affect one creature at a time. Now, during a social encounter, you can be pretty liberal with this, and it's not something you'll use in combat, well, ever, but still keep it in mind. Now, when it comes to homebrew changes, we're only going to make one, and to be honest, it's not really a super important homebrew change, and more so just the way I think it should be. But if you're currently reading a target's mind, having advantage on insight is actually not good enough, because there is nothing to insight when you know exactly what a target is thinking. So basically, unless your doppelganger is trying to decipher something really cryptic or something deep in their target's subconscious, no insight check is required. It will just know. Again, this is my interpretation of it. You don't have to run it this way, but I needed to say my piece. So now that we've gone over the basic doppelganger lore, info, and abilities, let's build an encounter. This encounter/quest will be aimed at parties level 3 to 6 depending on how difficult you want to make it, and last about 2 to 4 sessions depending on how long you want want to stretch it out. The party's motivation should always be tailored to your campaign, but for simplicity's sake, we'll keep it basic and say the promise of a reward and the fact this will be one of your party's first quests will be motivation enough. But tying this quest into another subplot or even your main story is easily doable. So, your party will arrive in Eridan, and from hearing folks talk about it before heading there or while on the road, Eridan will be known for 3 things. Its mage college for novices and beginner magic, its highly influential holy church dedicated to the god of your choice, and its vault of magical artifacts hidden away in the mayor's estate. The artifacts are locked away there under the king's orders and only ever seen by a select few. When your players get to the city, they will see Eridan's beginner mages having a public sparring match in the middle of the square, and it will be led by the college headmaster, an elven woman named Kada. Every once in a while, the mage college will do these exercises not only for practice, but so the college can show off the progress of its students and show the money the town provides in taxes isn't going to waste. But it is a beginner's mage college, so no more than cantrips or first level spells will be on display. Kada, however, will show off some decent fire magic as a spectacle for passers-by. However, your players will hear by word of mouth there is a generous bounty posted by the guard captain, and he wants someone to solve a particularly nasty series of murders. If your players ask about it, people will tell them to go to the city guard HQ and look for a dragonborn named Drix. When your players arrive, they will hear the guard captain arguing with a guy in his office, and after a little bit, a heavily armored dwarf will bust the door open and head outside. Drix will be clearly frustrated, but will cool down and invite your players inside to speak about the murders. Drix will explain the angry dwarf is a paladin named Magnus, who tried to convince Drix to drop the bounty on the murders. You see, this religious city has recently become more and more secular, and eventually a bunch of secular folk formed a group called the Free Thinkers, and they're led by a human man named Gregor who moved to Eridan a short while ago. This group started to gain quite a following among the people, and were even able to convince the mayor of Eridan to lower the amount of taxes the church gets and focus the funds on other community projects. This happened a few months ago, but the amount of notoriety and respect the freethinkers were getting for their clearly shown results continued to rise. However, a couple weeks ago, freethinker members started to die one by one. In fact, all the victims of the recent killings were known to be freethinkers. The freethinkers have been instructed to be extra safe and stay home at night, but with hundreds of known members, it's impossible for the city guard to protect them all. And it, of course, lets you as a dungeon master kill as many people as you need to until your players figure out the mystery. Now Magnus, being the leader of the church, obviously was not a fan of our mayor's decision, and believes the freethinkers are nothing but heretics and the guard captain should let whatever happens happen. Drix wasn't afraid to show his disgust for such an opinion, and so the argument occurred, and that's when your players entered. This might start to alert your players that Magnus just might be a suspect. However, just because the church isn't as powerful as it used to be, it's still a major governing body in the city and highly influential. So if Drix is going to convict Magnus, he needs undeniable proof he is never going to get, and that is where your party comes in. Drix will tell your players he cannot have the city guard help him because having the guards look into the church will draw too much attention. But after your party does their own investigation, Drix will give your players unofficial permission to stop the killer at all costs. But just then, a guard will bust into the room and alert Drix there has been another murder and the body has been taken to the coroner's office. And then Drix will tell your players to head there immediately. When your players arrive, a gnomish man named Padri will be tending to the new corpse and will identify himself as the coroner. Upon examining the body, Padri will confirm not only is the dead man a free thinker, but it is in fact their leader, Gregor. Padri will explain the guards found the body in an alleyway, and so far no witnesses have come forward. But the body is not only another free thinker, it was also damaged in the same way as the other bodies, meaning there's no mistaking they're linked. But how were all the other bodies damaged? Well, every corpse had burns all over them. Now, Padre will say these burn marks are indications of searing heat that could be caused by radiant damage, which a paladin such as Gregor would absolutely have access to. But your players might also remember seeing another particularly gifted fire user in town, the Mage College headmaster, Kada. If your players pick up on this, Padre will explain the burn marks could also, of course, be from fire, and he will add it's not a crazy idea to assume Kada either. You see, our free thinkers were also able to convince the mayor the Mage College is only a novice school that is wasting far too much money on advanced tools and facilities it doesn't need, meaning both the church and the Mage College have lost a fair amount of money. So, we got Kada and Magnus. Both have a motive, and both are capable of causing the damage on the corpses. Now, which one actually did it? Now, if you're thinking this is like our Oni encounter and there are actually two murderers, you are absolutely wrong, because the answer is neither. So, who is it then? Drix, the mayor? No. It is in fact Padre, the coroner. And Padre is our doppelganger. But why? What does Padre have to gain from all this craziness? Well, you see, our doppelganger is working for your campaign's big bad or any other powerful organization you wish. And as mentioned earlier, Eridan is famous for a few things: its mage college, its church, and its vault of magical artifacts. Padre has been given the task to destabilize the city in order to make it ripe for an invasion, and make getting the magical artifacts as simple as possible. And what better way to destabilize a city than to have its most powerful and influential figures killed? He isn't strong enough to do so himself, but a group of adventurers? Absolutely. And so Padre has started killing free thinkers and then maiming their corpses in a way so the killing can be pinned on either Kada or Magnus. Then after one is taken care of, he can simply keep killing until the other one is also taken care of. Hell, if entirely necessary, he can copy the physical appearance of one and have an eyewitness see them fleeing the murder. The only reason he hasn't done so already is because he doesn't want to risk exposing himself or letting people think for even a moment illusionary magic or shapeshifting can be at play. And this of course gives you a great card to play later. So far his plan is working beautifully because he has already killed one of its leaders, that being Gregor. But it's so much more beautiful than that, because one other juicy detail about our friend Padre is he only arrived in town a short while ago. And do you remember anyone else who only arrived a short while ago? Yep. Gregor. Because Gregor was actually Padre the whole time. He kidnapped some random guy and hid him away while he copied his appearance, started the free thinkers, stripped the college and church of their money, and created their obvious motives himself. And now that suspicion of both Magnus and Kada is at an all-time high, Padre killed the real Gregor to really drive it home and create utter chaos in the city. The people will be in an uproar with their new champion dead and demand something be done soon, or else riots could start breaking out. And so pressure will be placed on your party to figure out who the killer is fast. And if or when the major influential figures are dead, the city will dissolve to anarchy and be in a magnificent position to be taken by your big bad. Now, it really doesn't matter if your party suspects Kada or Magnus. Padre will simply provide information to back up either theory, since either one of them dying serves his purposes. And once one of them are dead, he can just kill again and help guide your party toward the still living suspect. And while your party discusses their theories in his office, whether they're talking in character or not, you can still use Padre to guide your players toward whatever theory they're talking about. Because if your party is talking about it, even out of character, those thoughts are clearly at the forefront of their characters' minds. And so a doppelganger like Padre can read them. That's right, an actual in-character reason to metagame, and it's the DM who gets to metagame. Oh my god, it's so beautiful. For stat blocks, I wouldn't make either Kada or Magnus too powerful, because your party will be lower level. I think a mage stat block and a level 6 paladin stat block works totally fine. Will your party be able to handle them pretty easily? Yeah, but that's okay, because they don't need to be too powerful, and neither does Padre, because this series of encounters is all about the roleplay and mystery, so there is no need to plan crazy dungeons or fortifications for our key players. Although though you certainly can if you want to. Now, even though Padre is clearly very smart and careful, it's nice to have a few hints he could be up to something. For example, slipping in the fact he recently moved to town around the same time as Gregor is a nice subtle clue. Another one would be him always jumping on whatever theory your party has when it comes to either Kada or Magnus. He wouldn't be too obvious, but he will clearly jump back and forth depending on your party's opinion. Your players could also conduct their own medicine checks on the corpses, and if they get a really good roll, like 20 plus, they could discover the wounds weren't the actual cause of death but applied afterwards, which would call Padre's credentials into question. And finally, if you want to be a little extra obvious, you could have Padre accidentally answer a question a player had that they were thinking about but didn't say out loud. However, I'd only save that for groups that are getting really frustrated. Now, these are not the most obvious clues, and that's okay, because even if your players never figure out Padre was the mastermind behind this whole thing, this quest can still be satisfying. Obviously, if they do, it's awesome, but there's no need to spoon feed them, because killing Kada, Magnus, or both will earn them a great reward and respect for their deeds. And later on in your campaign, when Eridan is taken over by your big bad, when they eventually find out why, it will be such a brutal reveal. So, a doppelganger who gets your party to do his dirty work for him? I think this is all quite spicy enough. But, if we wanted to, how can we make it even spicier? Well, we talked about it a bit, but you could plan spicy combat encounters at the Mage College and the church, filled with wizards and paladins fighting to defend their masters. Maybe you could have Drix be in on the con as well, bought off by your big bad, so taking over the city after destabilization is even simpler. And finally, you could homebrew it so our doppelganger is able to copy the abilities of people he's met so long as they're near his relative strength, allowing him to cast spells like Kada and smite your players like Magnus. But anyways, this is only one of many ways you can use doppelgangers in your Dungeons & Dragons campaign. But if you do use this in your future games, make sure to let me know how it goes. And of course, I'm always accepting challenges, so feel free to leave them below. Thanks for watching and indulging my hidden nerdy side.